Emotional tension stems from the tragedy of their mutual recognition. They aren't just
So if you look at an epic fantasy battlefield, right, from like a bird's eye view, you can usually do the math on who's going to win.
Oh, absolutely. It usually just comes down to numbers or, terrain, logistics, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly. But what happens when you take that massive continent-spanning war and shrink it down into a single claustrophobic arena? Like just two people, one survivor.
Yeah, the stakes completely changed.
They really do. And today we are diving deep into that exact scenario. We're dissecting Bloodbound, the Deluxe Edition, which is the debut novel by Ellis Hunter that kicks off the Cursed Covenant series.
Such a fantastic starting point for a series, honestly.
It really is. And our mission today for you listening is to basically give you a shortcut to understanding this incredible high-stakes fantasy world. We want to see how Hunter balances this massive magical world building with, honestly, really intense emotional friction.
It's a tricky balance to strike, for sure.
Yeah, it is. So, okay, let's unpack this because we are looking at a universe where dragons and witches aren't just fighting over like territorial borders or gold. They are fighting for control of the fundamental fabric of reality itself.
Yeah, and that's what's so striking right off the bat. Hunter completely bypasses the standard political skirmishes you usually see in fantasy world building.
Right, no trade disputes here.
Exactly. The conflict isn't about collecting taxes or expanding farmland. The entire geopolitical landscape is funneled into this ideological and literal blood feud between the witches and the dragon riders. And it's centered entirely on this one entity known simply as the heart.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual mechanics of the heart because this is where I feel like the lore really breaks from tradition.
Oh, totally.
Because we usually see magic treated as this ambient force in fantasy storytelling, right?
Yeah.
It acts like gravity or air, like anyone with the right genetics or a good enough library can just tap into it from anywhere.
Right, the traditional mana pool concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Hunter makes it a physical, localized anomaly. So how does that actually work in practice? Like, if it is a singular physical source, how are factions across the continent casting spells? Is it functioning like a massive Wi-Fi router with infinite range?
That is actually a great analogy, and that mechanical question really defines the entire society Hunter has built, because the heart functions less like a natural resource like water or coal, and much more like a centralized mainframe.
A mainframe, okay.
Right, it isn't just generating ambient magical energy for people to use willy-nilly. It is the literal physical anchor for the laws of physics and magic in this universe.
Wow. Okay, so it's foundational.
Exactly. The witches and dragon riders, they don't just siphon from it remotely like a battery. Access requires absolute dominion. When a faction controls the heart, they effectively hold the administrative privileges for reality within their borders.
Oh man, so it really is essentially a server hosting the internet for the entire planet.
That's spot on.
Like, if a faction loses control, they don't just lose the passwords, right? The winning side gets to rewrite the fundamental code of who even gets to be online.
Exactly. Which turns a standard magical war into this terrifying bottleneck. Because control of the heart isn't permanent, and it definitely isn't shared.
No power sharing agreements here.
None at all. It's determined by this ancient, magically binding covenant that forces a generational transition of power. And this operates on a strict zero-sum mechanism.
So somebody has to lose everything.
Always. We're looking at an extreme version of a petrostate economy, but instead of oil, the monopolized resource is the foundational structure of life.
Right.
So when one faction has absolute authority over the mainframe, inevitable authoritarianism follows. I mean, it has to. The ruling class becomes completely insulated by their reality-altering power, and the opposition is driven to just absolute desperation.
Because there are no diplomatic solutions when the prize is literal omnipotence.
Exactly. You can't compromise on reality.
Right. But I mean, I struggle to see how a protagonist maintains any real agency in a system that is that rigid. Which, I guess, brings us to Astrid.
Yes, Astrid, the very last Nachstern witch.
Right. And the overarching macro conflict funnels directly onto her shoulders. Because the Covenant demands that the Nachstern line duel the heir of the Dragon Riders, who is currently Prince Zryan, to determine who controls the heart for the next epoch.
It's an unimaginable amount of pressure.
Oh, absolutely. But the notes highlight that Astrid knows she cannot win this duel. Like, she firmly believes she is marching to an execution. So why should a reader, or you listening, invest in a protagonist who is essentially a passive victim of her own lore?
That's a really valid question.
Right. Because if she's already given up, aren't we just watching a prolonged funeral march?
Well, see, that assumption is precisely the trope that Hunter is deconstructing here. Fatalism doesn't inherently strip a character of agency. In fact, it completely redefines their operational parameter.
Interesting. How so?
Well, when survival is permanently removed from the equation, fear often goes with it. Astrid is not agonizing over whether she will survive the arena. That's a given for her. She's going to die.
Okay.
So instead, she is meticulously planning how she will face her end, and more importantly, how she can manipulate her inevitable loss to inflict maximum structural damage on the Dragon Riders regime.
Oh, wow. Okay. So her agency lies in the tactical weaponization of her own death.
Exactly. She is turning her execution into a sabotage mission.
That is so cool.
Right. It's a brilliant strategy. She knows the Dragon Riders require the duel to legitimize their continued control of the heart. The Covenant demands a clean, legitimate victory to transfer those administrative privileges we talked about.
So if it's messy.
If it's messy, if Astrid can corrupt that victory or manipulate the specific terms of her defeat within the arena, she can theoretically destabilize their hold on the magic. She isn't fighting to live. She is fighting to break the system on her way out.
Wow. Okay, so here is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because Hunter takes that highly calculating, totally fatalistic mindset and forces Astrid into direct proximity with the person she is meant to duel.
Prince Zryan.
Exactly, Prince Zryan. And this introduces the enemies to lovers dynamic, but under incredibly morbid conditions.
Very morbid.
I have to question how romance even functions here.
Yeah.
You know, you have two people who are fundamentally required by the architecture of their universe to destroy one another. It seems like it would feel artificial, like the plot is just forcing them together in a room.
I get why you'd think that, but the romance actually functions specifically because of those morbid conditions.
Really?
Yeah. Consider the psychological isolation both of these characters experience. Astrid is the last of her kind. She's burdened with this suicidal duty to her decimated people. And then you have Zryan, who is the heir to an authoritarian regime. And he is isolated by the brutal expectations of his own power. They are literally the only two people in this entire universe who truly understand the crushing atmospheric pressure of the Covenant.
Oh, I see. So it's like a shared trauma.
Exactly. The emotional tension stems from the tragedy of their mutual recognition. They aren't just navigating a clash of personalities, which is what you usually get in enemies to lovers. They are fighting the rigid programming of their reality.
And it creates a ticking clock on every single interaction.
Always.
Because if they start to understand each other or even care for one another, the tragedy just deepens. It isn't a simple misunderstanding keeping them apart. It is the literal mechanics of the world's magic system demanding blood.
Right. It makes intimacy feel incredibly dangerous.
Almost illicit. Yeah, every shared moment is heavy because the reader knows the Covenant is absolute.
And what's fascinating here is how Hunter uses that romance to test the structural integrity of the lore.
What do you mean?
Well, the affection between Astrid and Zryan becomes a subversive act against the authoritarianism of the heart. If the Nachstern curse is an absolute law of physics, what are the actual boundaries of that magic?
Well, like, can they break the rules?
Exactly. Can a covenant be broken from the inside if the two administrative keys refuse to turn? The romance isn't a distraction from the world building. It is the primary mechanism challenging it.
That is such a smart way to weave tropes together.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have this highborn, deeply magical conflict at the apex of society. Gods, kings, ancient curses determining the fate of reality in an arena.
The top of the pyramid.
Right. But a story that only lives in the penthouse suite risks feeling totally disconnected from the actual world it claims is at stake.
Completely.
And to address this, the narrative drops from the royal arena down into the gritty, soot-stained streets of the kingdom. And that's where we meet Skylar.
Yes, Skylar is such a crucial character. She's a commoner, a really clever young woman whose life has been systematically dismantled by the downstream effects of the royal family's magical monopoly.
Yeah, the notes mention her mother was killed as a direct result of the regime's violence.
Exactly. So while Astrid is navigating the heavy burden of elite power, Skylar is down there surviving the brutal socioeconomic fallout of it.
Right, she views the upcoming duel not as some grand, tragic destiny, but basically as institutional corruption.
Just another day of the rich ruining everything.
Pretty much. To her, these royals aren't romantic figures burdened by duty. They are the architects of her misery. But I do have to push back a little on the genre mashing here.
Okay, lay it on me.
So, Skylar's story kicks off when her best friend disappears. which pulls her into this underground investigation. But why do we need a gritty noir detective plot interrupting our sweeping dragon and witch epic? Like, doesn't splicing a street-level true crime narrative into a high fantasy duel cause major pacing issues?
You'd think so, but we need it because it completely deconstructs the inherent elitism of the Chosen One fantasy narrative.
Okay, interesting. Unpack that a bit.
So, in a standard epic, the collateral damage, the peasants, the city infrastructure, the ordinary lives, they're all just background dressing for the hero's grand journey.
Right, the hero smashes a tavern and we never think about the tavern owner.
Exactly. But by introducing Skylar's perspective, Hunter employs the precise mechanics of noir. And noir is fundamentally about institutional decay, a corrupt justice system, and the vulnerability of the individual against massive, untouchable forces.
Oh, I see. So Skylar acts as our lens into how the magic system actually governs the masses.
Yes. Remember when we discussed the heart functioning like a mainframe for reality?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi router.
Right. Well, Skylar is the end user experiencing the system crashes, the corrupted files, and the brutal surveillance of that network. Her investigation into her friend's disappearance reveals the pressure from the impending royal duel is causing massive fractures down at the street level.
People are just falling through the cracks.
Worse than that, people are going missing because the elite are quietly mobilizing resources, silencing dissent, and preparing for the fallout of the Covenant. Skylar grounds the abstract stakes of the magic system into this immediate, visceral reality.
It provides the human cost.
Exactly.
Because if the Dragon Riders lose control of the heart, or if Astrid somehow breaks the system, Skylar's world is the one that gets caught in the shockwave.
They're the ones who suffer.
Yeah. You cannot truly understand the weight of the royal conflict until you see the bruises it leaves on the populace. Skylar isn't just investigating a kidnapping, she is slowly mapping out the vulnerabilities in the regime's armor from the bottom up.
While Astrid is probing them from the top down.
Right, because the elites only look up at the magic, they never look down at the streets. Skylar is weaponizing the blind spots they cast.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the convergence of these two storylines is really where the novel achieves its real narrative momentum.
The collision course.
Exactly. You have Astrid navigating the theoretical, magical rules of the kingdom, and Skylar navigating the practical, physical realities. As the duel approaches, the absolute grip of the royal families begins to slip. Rebellion simmers in the shadows. And eventually, these two completely separate orbits just collide.
But theoretically, jumping between a doomed royal witch and a cynical street sleuth could give a reader severe tonal whiplash. I mean, how does Hunter weave these vastly different perspectives without it feeling like two completely different books mashed together?
It functions seamlessly because they are investigating the exact same crime from different ends of the social spectrum.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, the overarching mystery of the book isn't just who took Skylar's friend or how will Astrid survive. The central mystery is the true nature of the heart itself. By utilizing a 360-degree view of the society, Hunter reveals that the magical covenant and the street-level corruption are symptoms of the exact same disease.
So they end up needing each other's perspectives to see the full picture.
They do.
Astrid realizes that the kingdom she is fighting to influence is a powder keg ready to blow, regardless of who wins the duel. And Skylar realizes that the corruption she is fighting isn't just political. It is woven into the very fabric of the magic.
And that synthesis escalates the emotional tension exponentially. The stakes are distributed across the entire society rather than isolated in one throne room.
Right, you're not just worried about one person.
Exactly. You are terrified for Astrid's survival in the arena, but you are equally invested in Skylar's desperate search in the shadows. Because if Astrid wins but the city burns to the ground, it's a hollow victory.
Totally.
And if Skylar finds her friend but the magic system collapses, they might not survive the aftermath anyway. The narrative feeds on this dual-engine structure. The top-down view provides the grand existential tragedy, while the bottom-up view provides the urgent, ticking clock danger.
It ensures you never get fatigued by the heavy lore, because you are constantly brought back down to the human element.
It's brilliant pacing.
It really is. And just when the street-level mystery gets too oppressive, you are swept back up into the dangerous romance and the dragons. It's just a masterful balancing act that constantly reinforces the central theme. What is the actual tangible cost of power?
And who pays for it?
Exactly. So what does this all mean for you listening? Whether you're a die-hard fan of dragon fantasy or you just appreciate a structurally brilliant novel, If you are tired of monolithic fantasy worlds where the mechanics of magic have literally no socioeconomic consequences, Bloodbound offers a profound alternative.
It really is a masterclass in grounding high fantasy.
It is. Hunter has engineered a universe where dragons and ancient curses are anchored by intense, street-level realities. You get a deconstruction of the Chosen One trope, a deeply fraught enemies-to-lovers dynamic, and a noir mystery, all tied to a localized magic system that basically functions like a ticking time bomb.
And the mechanics of that time bomb leave us with a critical, lingering question to consider before we wrap up.
Oh, absolutely. Give it to us.
Well, we established earlier that the heart is the singular administrative source of all magic, right?
Right. The mainframe.
And we also know that Astrid is the absolute last Nachstern witch. The Covenant demands a duel to transfer power. So what actually happens to the architecture of reality if Astrid actually dies in that arena?
Oh, wow. Does the magic tied to the witches simply evaporate?
That is the terrifying unknown. If her bloodline is extinguished, does the administrative code of the heart just delete the witch's connection permanently?
Just a 404 error for magic.
Exactly. Or does the heart, operating as a sentient or semi-sentient mainframe, suddenly demand a completely new, unpredictable vessel to replace the Nachstern line? I mean, a magical vacuum of that magnitude could fundamentally rewrite the laws of physics for the entire continent.
Man, that completely reframes the stakes.
It changes everything.
If that singular, highly pressurized focal point shatters because the bloodline ends, all that concentrated, reality-altering power might just flood into a world that is entirely unprepared to survive it.
It's a chilling thought.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the architecture of the world you explore. Keep looking for the connections in the shadows, and we will catch you on the next one.
Grab Bloodbound by Ellis Hunter, now on sale, $23.95. Don't miss this chance and build good habit and achieve remarkable results. Buy now today.
Like and subscribe for more Bookhaven podcasts.